Welcome back to the Work and Play Podcast Unlocked. We're diving deep into episode 124 of the Work and Play Podcast today.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, Arylle Young's interviewing mental health professional and entrepreneur Jovan Palmer in this one.
I'm excited to break it down.
Me too. We'll analyze Aryll's hosting techniques.
And unpack some of those sneaky monetization strategies she uses too.
Definitely. It's like a masterclass in subtle business growth using your podcast, right?
Totally. Arylle's so good at showcasing her expertise as a career coach without being pushy at all.
Yeah, and she makes Jovan feel super comfortable opening up about his journey. It's like right off the bat, she creates this warm, inviting space.
I love how she does that. You just feel like you're part of the conversation.
Right, and she sprinkles in these personal anecdotes that her audience can totally relate to. Like she talks about her own struggles with work-life balance and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it's not just about relatability, like she's strategic about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
She knows her audience is full of entrepreneurs and people transitioning out of corporate life. She connects with them on that level.
Definitely. It builds trust,
Huge trust builder.
You feel like you can relate to her.
Exactly. And it makes her advice even more valuable. She's not just talking the talk, she's walked the walk. You know what I mean?
For sure. And she's great at guiding the conversations.
Oh, yeah.
She has insightful questions, digs a little deeper, and pulls out these golden nuggets of wisdom from Jovan's experience.
It's not just a passive interview, She's actively shaping the narrative and making sure the listeners get tons of value.
Especially those business owners and aspiring podcasters in her audience. And speaking of Jovan, his career journey is a wild one.
Seriously. I mean, who goes from Walmart to Bed Bath & Beyond to Apple tech support to social work?
It's amazing.
It is, but it's not just random,
What do you mean?
Like, it's actually a really good illustration of how sometimes figuring out what you don't want to do is just as important as figuring out what you do want to do.
Picked a process of elimination, right?
Exactly. And I think that resonates with anyone feeling a little lost in their career, especially people thinking about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, because it can be scary making that leap. So Jovan starts out wanting to be a computer engineer.
Right?
And then tries all these different things before finding his true calling as a social worker. It really highlights the importance of self-awareness.
Absolutely. That's a theme that runs through the whole episode.
And one that Jovan keeps coming back to.
Big time. He even talks about corporate trauma, which I thought was fascinating.
Oh, tell me about that.
So he's basically saying that a lot of us develop unhealthy patterns and coping mechanisms in corporate environments.
The stress, the pressure, the office politics.
Yeah, all of it. And he says it's super important to recognize and address this corporate trauma before you try to become an entrepreneur.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. If you're carrying around all that baggage, it's going to affect how you make decisions, how you handle stress.
How you build relationships, too.
Exactly. So he's advocating for healing before leaping, which is such a powerful message.
And his story about the at-risk youth he worked with. Chills, seriously.
It's powerful.
He talks about witnessing their therapeutic breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And how that sparked his own journey toward healing. You can just hear the passion in his voice.
Absolutely. He's connecting his desire to help others with his own need for self-discovery.
Which is a perfect example of what Arylle helps people do.
It is. She's like the expert guide for that journal,
Totally. And Jovan's so open about the whole process.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about the impact of childhood trauma on his career choices.
His struggles with his sexuality and identity.
And how therapy helped him overcome these challenges.
I mean, that's deep stuff.
It's incredibly insightful, it's real, it's honest, it's vulnerable, and I think that's what makes this episode so powerful.
It makes you feel like you're not alone in your struggles, Like even successful entrepreneurs have been through some tough stuff.
Exactly, and it makes you realize that healing isn't this linear process.
Right.
It's ongoing. It's about self-discovery and growth. Aryll's really good at emphasizing that.
She's weaving it into the conversation beautifully.
And Jovan links this healing journey directly to success as an entrepreneur.
He does. He argues that unaddressed trauma can totally sabotage a business. It affects everything, like you said earlier.
Decision-making, relationships, stress management.
Yeah, it's all connected. So he's basically saying that therapy and self-awareness are essential tools for building a strong foundation for your business.
Which is where Aryll's expertise comes in. She doesn't just listen to Jovan's story. She finds ways to integrate it with her own coaching services and monetization strategies.
He's so subtle about it, though.
I know. It's brilliant.
Like she casually mentions her morning meetup community, which is a paid membership for entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah?
And she highlights how valuable it is for connection, support, and education.
All things that directly address the challenges Jovan's talking about?
Right, and she does it without breaking the flow of the conversation. It's like, hey, if you're struggling with this, I have a resource that can help.
It's so smart. It adds value to the episode and subtly promotes her business.
Exactly, and she doesn't just do it for herself.
What do you mean?
She actually encourages Jovan to share his business offerings as well.
Like his Identified to Heal program?
Yes. And his one-on-one coaching services, it's a win-win. He gets exposure to her audience, and it reinforces the episode's message about healing and self-discovery.
And then she mentions that app of a download link.
Which could be affiliate marketing.
Totally. Passive income while providing value to her listeners.
See, it's a masterclass in monetizing a podcast.
And of course, the podcast itself is a huge part of her business strategy.
Oh, for sure.
It builds her brand, attracts potential clients, establishes her as an expert in her niche.
I mean, she's proving that a podcast can be way more than just a show. It can be a thriving business.
This episode is a perfect example. Engaging content, connection with the audience, revenue generation, community building.
She's doing it all. Now, if we look at how Arylle can connect even more deeply with her audience of business owners and aspiring podcasters, I think there's a huge opportunity for her to offer more content specifically for podcasters, especially those who are also business owners.
Yeah, like what kind of stuff?
Well, she could do entire episodes on podcasting equipment, editing software, all the technical stuff.
Maybe that's good.
Different marketing strategies, how to grow your audience, monetization models.
Ooh, monetization models. That's a hot topic.
Right. People want to know how to make money from their podcasts.
Definitely. And she could interview successful podcasters, get their tips and tricks.
Exactly. Sharing those insider secrets, that behind-the-scenes knowledge.
I bet her listeners would love that. And she could even leverage that morning meetup community.
Oh, for sure.
Create networking opportunities specifically for podcasters.
Yes. Imagine like live Q&A sessions where she answers questions about podcasting best practices.
Ooh, I like that.
Think about the collaborations and cross-promotions, too. She could partner with other podcasters in her niche.
Oh, that's smart.
Expand her reach, tap into new audiences.
Like a whole ecosystem, right?
Exactly. And by positioning herself as this go-to resource for podcasting entrepreneurs, she'd solidified her status as a thought leader in that space.
And unlocked even more revenue streams. She's already doing such a great job with it.
She is. This episode's just scratching the surface of what she could do.
Now, beyond the business side of things, this episode also has some really powerful lessons for anyone who wants to live a more fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Whether you're an entrepreneur or not.
Jovan's story is so inspiring. It really drives home the importance of self-awareness, healing, and vulnerability.
He's a walking testament to what therapy can do for you.
I know, right? From corporate burnout to finding purpose and meaning in social work.
And then starting his own business.
It's incredible. And it reminds us that success isn't just about external achievements.
It's about the inner work, too.
Yeah, self-discovery, aligning your actions with your values.
And he talks about the importance of having a supportive community around you.
Oh, totally.
Finding mentors who can guide you and cheer you on along the way.
Like his colleague Ken.
Exactly. He gave Jovan a chance even though he didn't have experience in the nonprofit world.
It's like that saying, it takes a village.
It really does. And remember how Jovan talked about all those years he spent bouncing between jobs?
Yeah, surfing's for his niche.
It's a good reminder that success doesn't happen overnight.
Patience, right.
Patience, persistence, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes.
And he's so open about sharing those mistakes. He talks about losing that $5,000 contract because he didn't have a proper agreement in place.
Ouch. That's a tough lesson.
But a valuable one, right? It shows that you need to have good business practices in place even when you're just starting out.
Absolutely. Protecting yourself, making sure things are legal and above board.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and look at Jovan's career path more closely.
Okay.
Because it offers some really interesting insights for people transitioning from corporate life to entrepreneurship, which is something a lot of Arylle's listeners are thinking about.
Definitely. It all starts with that dream of becoming a computer engineer, right?
Which didn't quite work out as planned. But he doesn't see it as a failure.
No, he sees it as a learning experience.
Exactly. He realized that a traditional 9-to-5 desk job just wasn't for him.
So he kept exploring, tried different things.
Even if they seemed kind of random at the time.
Yeah. Which is a great lesson for anyone feeling stuck, Be open to experimentation, try things outside your comfort zone.
Don't be afraid to shake things up.
And notice how he talks about his time at Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, even the Apple call center.
He learned new skills at each job.
Developed his work ethic.
Got experience in customer service, problem solving.
All those things that are essential for entrepreneurs.
It's like all those seemingly unrelated jobs were actually laying the groundwork for his future.
They were all part of the journey.
And then he lands that job as a social worker for the state of Georgia.
And that's where things really start to click for him.
He finds his passion.
That desire to help others, especially those at-risk youth.
And you can tell how much he loves it. It's more than just a job for him.
It's his calling.
Right. And it highlights the importance of finding work that aligns with your values.
Work that gives you a sense of purpose.
And remember how he talks about Ken, his colleague?
Yeah, his mentor. He believed in Jovan.
Gave him a chance. Sometimes all it takes is one person to open a door for you.
To see your potential and give you that opportunity.
And Jovan took that opportunity and ran with it. He learned how to adapt his corporate skills to the unique challenges of working with at-risk youth.
He had to learn how to build rapport, set boundaries, navigate complex situations.
And he did it all with empathy and understanding. Those people skills are so important.
Especially for entrepreneurs.
Okay, now let's talk about that corporate trauma Jovan mentioned.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's something that so many people who've worked in traditional corporate environments can relate to.
The stress, the burnout, the feeling of not being appreciated.
It takes its toll, right?
And Jovan's point is that we often carry that with us even after we leave those jobs.
It becomes baggage.
Yeah. And he argues that it can sabotage our entrepreneurial journeys.
Because it affects everything. Our decision-making, our relationships with clients, our ability to handle stress.
It's like he's saying, hey, before you jump into entrepreneurship, take some time to heal those wounds from your corporate past.
Because those wounds can show up in your business in all sorts of ways.
Leading to unhealthy patterns, self-sabotage.
And that's where therapy comes in. Jovan's a huge advocate for mental health support.
He says it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
Of self-awareness.
Exactly, and he talks about his own experience with therapy, how it helped him process his childhood trauma, overcome his identity crisis.
And build a stronger foundation for himself.
Both personally and professionally.
He believes that every entrepreneur should consider therapy.
Especially when dealing with the pressure of starting and running a business.
And Arylle agrees. She's talked about her own experience with therapy before leaving her corporate job.
They both emphasize that taking care of your mental health is essential for success.
It's not just about building a thriving business. It's about creating a sustainable foundation for your life.
A foundation built on well-being, fulfillment.
Now let's talk about Jovan's transition to entrepreneurship. It's a great example of how opportunities can appear when you're open to new things.
Yeah, like that chance encounter with David Shands.
The Atlanta entrepreneur.
Yeah, him. Jovan went to one of his events because a friend invited him.
Networking, right?
It's so important. You never know who you'll meet or what doors might open.
And that meeting led to an internship with David's company.
Where he gained experience in all sorts of areas. Event management, marketing, admin stuff.
And it's interesting how his corporate experience actually came in handy there.
Totally. Those skills transferred over.
It's like everything he'd learned up to that point was preparing him for this.
And the internship gave him a crash course in the entrepreneurial world.
He was surrounded by successful people, learned from the best.
It shifted his mindset, showed him what was possible.
It's so important to have those role models, those mentors who inspire you.
People who are living the life you want to live.
And that internship gave Jovan the confidence and the skills he needed to launch his own businesses.
His coaching practice, the Identified to Heal program.
He took that leap of faith.
And of course, it wasn't always easy. He talked about losing that $5,000 contract because he didn't have a solid agreement.
Those early mistakes can be tough.
But they're valuable lessons. He learned the importance of having good business practices from the get-go.
This episode really shows how interconnected our personal and professional lives are.
Totally. Jovan's story is proof that our past experiences, especially the painful ones, can impact our career choices, our business decisions, even our relationships with clients.
It's a reminder that healing is an ongoing journey.
It takes self-awareness, vulnerability, a willingness to face our shadows.
And it can lead to greater success and fulfillment in all areas of our lives.
Now, for anyone out there who's thinking about making that jump from corporate life to entrepreneurship, this episode's packed with advice.
It is, right? Where do we even begin?
Well, Jovan's really big on prioritizing your healing.
Yeah, he talks about not waiting until you're completely burnt out to address those underlying issues.
Exactly. Like, don't wait until you hit rock bottom.
And his suggestion about connecting with a therapist while you still have good health insurance, that's genius.
Right. It takes away that financial stress.
You can build that relationship with a therapist without worrying about the cost.
And he makes a good point about finding the right therapist.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Definitely not. It's like any other relationship, you need to have that trust and connection.
You got to feel comfortable opening up to them.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to shop around, Interview a few therapists until you find one who really gets you.
And both Jovan and Arylle talk about the power of community, too.
Huge.
Finding your tribe, your people.
Especially when you're an entrepreneur, it can be so isolating sometimes.
Yeah, you need that support system.
People who understand what you're going through.
People who can offer advice, encouragement.
And even business opportunities. Like, remember how Jovan got connected with David Shands through a friend?
Right. It's all about those connections.
And don't underestimate the value of mentorship either.
Finding someone who's a few steps ahead of you.
Someone who can guide you, share their wisdom.
Okay, now let's circle back to that corporate trauma thing.
Ooh, yeah, that really hit home for me.
Me too. So real.
Jovan's so good at describing how those experiences can manifest in our businesses.
Like that pressure to conform, the lack of autonomy.
Feeling undervalued, overlooked.
It's exhausting, and it leaves its mark.
And even when we leave those environments, those wounds can linger.
They can affect how we make decisions, how we interact with clients.
How we handle stress. It can be a vicious cycle.
So what can we do about it?
Well, Jovan says it starts with self-awareness.
Paying attention to those thoughts, those feelings that get triggered by our past experiences.
Noticing how they're showing up in our businesses.
Once we're aware of those patterns, we can start to break free from them.
And he also encourages us to be vulnerable.
To talk about our experiences.
Trusted friends, mentors, a therapist.
It's about letting go of that shame and guilt.
And ultimately, prioritizing our healing.
Making time for self-care, whatever that looks like for you.
Therapy, meditation, exercise, spending time in nature.
Whatever fills your cup.
Exactly. And Jovan's message is so clear. Vulnerability is not a weakness.
It's a strength.
He even calls it the new sexy.
I love that.
In a world that's obsessed with hustle and perfection.
Being authentic is radical.
It is. And think about it. What if prioritizing our healing journey actually helps us attract more opportunities?
What if it unlocks our full potential?
It's definitely something to ponder.
Well, that about wraps up this deep dive into the Work and Play podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.